Welcome to the final review for 5-Minute Theory. There's two ways of taking this test. One is to watch me and to fill it out with me just to reinforce all of the things that you've learned through this. Or what I really recommend is that you stop the video, take the test, and see if you can do all of it. If you can do all of it, then you've really mastered it. Then watch my video to see if you got all the right answers. Okay? So this is one of those things that if you miss a whole bunch of stuff, there's lessons earlier in 5-Minute Theory that you really didn't learn. So let's start off with the final review by writing our name in, because you want to get credit if you have to tear off the page and hand it in. Okay, congratulations, you reached the end. Let's finish this review to see if you've mastered all of the music theory in this book. Part number 1, I'm drawing in the enharmonic tone for the note given, and then I write the note name under the note. All right, so you have to know what an enharmonic tone is. If you don't know what that is, then you need to go back and learn about enharmonic tones, okay? But hopefully you do. Enharmonic tones is the same note that has two different names. So I'm going to draw the same note here. So this is a D flat. In your keyboard, in your head, because I don't have it listed on this page, what is the same note as a D flat? C sharp. All right, did you get that right before I told you the answer? Hopefully. Let's keep going. A flat on the keyboard. Picture an A flat, and then picture what other note name that same key has. It's a G sharp. All right, are we getting these? If you are not, just stop the video and go learn your enharmonic tones. All right, number 3, E flat. Usually you go down a note name and you put a sharp, okay? F sharp, if it's a sharp, you go up a note name and you do a flat. B sharp, except for when you do a B sharp. So you think about where a B is on your keyboard, all right? Visualize it in your head. Up a half step is C, right? So my B sharp is C, so I don't have to actually write a C sharp or a C flat. C flat is actually B natural. All right, part number 2, I'm going to write the interval under the pair of notes. Now you remember what an interval is. It is the space between the numbers between first and second note. All right, so F to G, if I think about just the letter names, now I'm not thinking about half steps and whole steps, I'm just doing the letter names, is a second. All right, F to D, we can count on our fingers, F, G, A, B, C, D. That is 6. But I have to put 6 to the. All right, C and C, C to shining C, we know that's an 8, but we call that an octave. B to D, 1, 2, 3. So third. D to C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, that's a 7th, or you can count the letter names, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. All right, and now we're going backwards. F to E, obviously, is a 2nd. Same F to G. Okay, if I'm going almost all the way to the octave, but not quite, that is a 7th. A to the same A is a 1, but we call that a unison. D down to A, that is a 4th. You can count it in your head, D, C, B, A, and hold up your fingers and you figure out that's a 4th. And then C, F is a 5th. Did you get every one of those correct? If you did, then you have mastered intervals, at least the intervals that we know so far. Okay. If you haven't, then make sure that you go back to the lesson that we cover intervals and spend a little bit of time doing this. All right, part number 3. On a starting note, we're building a tetrachord. Now you remember what a tetrachord is. I'm not giving you the answer. on this page, but a tetrachord is 4 notes having the pattern of whole, whole, half. So I start on a note, I go up a whole step, I go up another whole step, I go up a half step. So I have to know what those notes are using that pattern of whole and half steps. So if I think about it, F, up a whole step is G, up another whole step is A, up a half step is not A sharp, it's B flat, because remember, the rule is I have to use 4 consecutive letter names. So now I'm just going to draw those. F, G, A, B flat. Right, so if you can visualize your keyboard in your head and you can name whole steps and half steps in your head, visualizing a keyboard makes it so much easier. All right, so B flat. So B flat up a whole step is C. Up another whole step is D. Up a half step, I've got to use E, D to E flat. So now I'm just going to draw those in, C, D, E flat. Now you have to be able to write legibly. If you are drawing stuff on your keyboard and nobody can recognize what it is, then take off points. That's not right. All right, let's keep going. Number 18, D, up a whole step, E, up another whole step, E to F is a half step, so E to F sharp is a whole step, and now a half step, G. So D, E, F sharp, G. If you were able to write in all of those tetrachords without using me as your cheat, I hope you're not doing that. If you can do that, then you know what tetrachords are. You've mastered that. We can go on to the next part. If you haven't, if you missed any of those or all of those, go back to the lesson where I teach you the tetrachords. All right, part number 4. I'm just using my music math skills. So I'm adding and subtracting note values. So this should be simple. 1 minus 2 equals a negative 1. Plus 3 equals, so I'm at 2, plus 1.5 or 1.5 equals 3.5 minus 0.5 equals 3. I like to do it like this versus, I can do it in my head, but as far as me showing you and hopefully having you understand how this works, I'm just doing it on the page here. All right, and number 20. So 4 minus 1 equals 3, plus 1/2 equals 3.5, yeah? Plus 1.5, 1.5 is 5. All right, you with me? Minus, what kind of rest is that? It's a whole rest, so minus 4 equals 1. So you have to actually be pretty good at, first of all, recognizing the note values and knowing how many counts or half counts are in each note value or rest. And then you also kind of have to have your math skills down. Okay, this is really good for getting that extra credit for applying music to another curriculum-based thing that you have to learn, which is math. All right, let's go on to the second half and let's finish this book. All right, part number 5. Each of the pairs of notes are a whole step apart. Oh, we love this. Make them a half step apart by adding an accidental to the second note. But I'm also adding a key signature to each one of the lines. So there's a lot of things to think about. So let's start off on this one here by writing in our key signature notes, B, E, and A, right? Just to remind you which are the key signature notes. So I'm going to say F to G. That's a whole step, but now I need to make the G a half step. Okay, so I make that a half step by lowering the G. F to G flat is a half step. C to D is a whole step. Okay, I think it's pretty obvious. I'm going to lower that D to D flat. Number 23, I start with an F. This note is an E, but in the key signature it's E flat. So F, E, E flat is a whole step. So I need to make this a natural. So I need to raise that E flat to E natural because I have to use my key signature. All right, B flat to A is, oh, it's A flat in the key signature, right? So I need to raise my A flat to A natural. So that's what I do that. This is kind of tricky, but if you get the concept of half steps and whole steps, then you hopefully can figure it out. All right, and my number 25 through 28, I've got a F sharp and I have a C sharp. So I love writing my key signature notes in here just so that it reminds you what I'm trying to do. So A to B is a whole step. How do I make that a half step? A to B flat. Yeah, you can have a B flat accidental in a sharp key signature. So number 26, my first note is F sharp, and this is E. So imaginary keyboard, F sharp, F, E. That's a whole step. How do I make it a half step? How do I make my E a half step away from F sharp? I actually have to make it an E sharp. That's tricky. B to C sharp in my key signature. I know that's a whole step, so I'm going to get rid of my sharp. How do I make that? B to C is my half step, so that would have to be a C natural. I have to use a natural sign to cancel that sharp. And the last one, E to D, is a whole step. I've got to make the D a half step away from E. If you use that in your imaginary keyboard, I have to make that a D sharp. So if you got that correct, not only are you pretty much mastering that whole step, half step idea, not only are you mastering the concept of a key signature, and you have mastered what a visualization of a keyboard is in your head, but you put all of that together. So if you got all of those correct, you're pretty smart, actually. That is not easy. Let's go on to part number 6. So this one, I'm using the pattern of whole and half steps to construct a major scale. You have to know what a major scale is as far as whole steps and half steps. So you can do it one of two ways. You can think of two tetrachords connected by a whole step, or you can do the whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, whole, whole, half, ho, 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 half, ho, 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 half on the second half. All right, if you got that and then you have that visualization of your keyboard in your head, then we can spell these notes. So number 29, basically I'm going B flat up a whole, C up a whole, D up a half. Remember, I have to use the next letter in the alphabet. D, this is my half step. Now ho, 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 half. So E up a whole, F up a whole, G up a whole, and A up a half. Now it's not A sharp. Remember, the next note name is there. Now I've got to figure out what my key signature is going to be. So I have a B flat and an E flat. And that's pretty simple. So I'm going to draw my treble clef here. And then I'm going to draw my B flat and E flat. All right. So you have to have the treble clef. Otherwise, your B flat and E flat, nobody knows what that is, because if it was in bass clef, those would be two different flats altogether. Okay, so draw your treble clef in. Number 30, we're going to name the G major scale. Now you might even know your G major scale, so you could just name those notes, but let's do it with our whole and half steps. G up a whole, A up a whole, B up a half, here's my half step, is C. Whole, D, whole, E, whole is F sharp, and then up a half, there's my other half, is G. So that is my G major scale. So let's start off by drawing our treble clef. Have to have a treble clef, otherwise you can't put in a key signature. What is the one accidental in this line. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp. So I have to draw my F sharp. Now remember, your F sharp is up on top. It's not down here. How did you do on that? Did you really know how to compose a major scale off of any starting note? Can you do that if you walked up to your keyboard? Can you pick out a note and then construct a major scale with whole steps and half steps? If you can, you're in really good shape. If you can't, go back to that lesson where we talked about major scales and figure it out. All right, last one. And my gosh, you're going to be done with this book after this. So no more having to fill in this fun 5 minutes theory stuff. All right, in part number 7, we're going to use a starting pitch. Pitch is C, to compose a chromatic scale. Remember, sharp says you go up, flat says you go down. All right, so this is where having a keyboard in your head really helps. This one starts on C. Now you got to use your mental image of your keyboard, and then it's pretty simple. Now there's not a lot of room between C to C, so I'm going to make these pretty tight. C up a half step is C sharp. Up another half step is D. Another half step is D sharp. Up a half step is E. Now up another half step is F. Not E sharp, right? Up a half step is F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B. This is my half step from B to C, okay? So can you in your head visualize what it looks like to play a chromatic scale starting on C? That's pretty simple in your head, but also naming those notes and drawing them on a staff is what's really important here. Now we're going back down. We got to use our flat note names. So again, C to B is a half step. Now B down a half step is B flat, not A sharp, because we're using flat note names on our way down. A down a half step is A flat. A flat down a half step is G. Down another half step is G flat. And down a half step is F. Now think about it on your keyboard. Between the F down a half step is the note E, not F flat. Half step from E is E flat. Half step from E flat is D. Half step from D is D flat. And then I wind up on C. Wow. Composing a chromatic scale is pretty easy to play, especially on keyboard. Harder on saxophone or clarinet or something like that. Pretty easy to play, almost easy to name those note names. A little harder to draw it on a staff to where you get every one of those notes legibly, hopefully. Use the sharp note names on the way up, flat note names on the way down. If you can do that, you're done. Can you believe it? After all of this time, you're finally finished with throw this book away. And then don't hate me for it. You really have learned a lot in this whole course of 5-minute theory. Composing major scales, knowing what enharmonic tones are, knowing all of those notation symbols and how all of that works is a huge part of the foundation that you will have to become a great musician. So congratulations for finishing the book, and hopefully you'll continue learning even more difficult concepts of music theory as you progress in getting better and better as a musician. Congratulations, you're done.